and facing her head on. I think my mouth must have fallen open when I first read that. Where was this story when I was a kid? In the book you're holding, you'll find a Scandinavian version of the Eros and Psyche myth, East of the Sun, West of the Moon. In it, the protagonist sets out on a perilous mission to save her enchanted husband. She allies with the wind and journeys to the land of trolls. Over and over again, she says, "I am not afraid." Also in these pages, you'll meet Gina, the young giant, who reaches out to bridge the gap between her people and the nearby villagers, changing the course of history, and the Summer Queen, who faces off with the fearsome winter giant to save the lands of the north. You'll read about Sea Girl, who daringly sneaks into the Dragon King's lair to help her people. Here, as in life, the women and girls of the world are heroes, overcoming tremendous obstacles for the benefit of their communities and the people they love. "We have always fought," Cameron Hurley wrote in her award-winning essay of the same name. But history has swallowed up the narratives of so many of those fights, the multifaceted story of those moments of women's empowerment, those toppled patriarchies. That pointed and damaging erasure requires us, in our journeys toward this new mythology, to also have an eye toward the past. It means that we must become heroic archaeologists, as Alice Walker was for Zora Neale Hurston, and muddle through the shattered remnants left in the wake of the ongoing march of the powerful. "There's nothing new under the sun," Octavia Butler told us, "but there are new suns." Within these pages you will discover that there are also very old suns, long hidden and thought lost, and long overdue for some shine. Preface. The traditional fairy and folk tales in this collection, as in my earlier books of tales, have one characteristic in common. They all portray spirited, courageous heroines. Although a great number of such collections are in print, this type of heroine is surprisingly rare. Taken as a whole, the body of traditional fairy and folk tales, the two terms have become almost interchangeable, is very heavily weighted with heroes, and most of the heroines we do encounter are far from heroic, always endowed with beauty, and it often appears that beauty is their only reason for being in the tale. They conform in many ways to the sentimental idea of women in the 19th century. They are good, obedient, meek, submissive to authority, and naturally inferior to the heroes. They sometimes suffer cruelties, but are patient under ill treatment. In most cases, they are docile or helpless when confronted with danger or a difficult situation. In short, as heroines, they do not inspire or delight, but tend to bore the reader. I think it is their meekness that repels. They are acted upon by people or events in the tale. They rarely initiate their own action to change matters. In contrast to this type of heroine, when clever or strong women appear in folk tales, they are usually portrayed as unpleasant, if not evil, characters, cruel witches, jealous stepmothers, or old hags. It is not my intention to delve into the psychological or social meanings behind the various images of heroines in folk tales, but simply to note that the vast majority are not particularly satisfying to readers today. In actual fact, the women of much earlier centuries, particularly rural women, were strong, capable, and resourceful in a positive way, as hard-working members of a family or as widows on their own. Few folk tales reflect these qualities. Inevitably, the question arises, how many, if any, folk tales of strong, capable heroines exist in the printed sources available? In a sense, this book grew out of that question. Over a period of 3 years, I read thousands of fairy and folk tales in search for tales of clever, resourceful heroines, tales in which equally courageous heroines and heroes cooperated in their adventures, tales of likable heroines who had the spirit to take action, tales that were in themselves strong or appealing. As a result of that search, the heroines in this book are quite different from the usual folk and fairy tale heroines. In a few of the tales, the girls and women possess the power or knowledge of magic.